Hey guys, if you saw my review of the P90 Jazzmaster kit that I got from the Fretwire, you'd know that I actually thought it was a really decent kit. You can get a decent guitar out of it, and I think that it's a really good value. But with just a few minor upgrades and a couple of modifications, you can actually turn this kit into a pretty amazing guitar. For example, I only have about $200 total invested in this guitar, including the kit, and it's probably my favorite guitar to play right now. I'm Dan, this is Guns and Guitars, and I'll tell you all about it right now. Don't forget that if you're interested in building a kit guitar, you can use coupon code GUNSANDGUITARS to save $10 off of any kit at thefretwire.com. Now before we get any further, I do need to make an apology for something. In my original review of this kit, I talked about how nice and level the frets were and how they would only need just some minor tweaking to get a good playable action. I must have been drunk or something when I looked at them closely the first time, because when I took the neck off to work on it, that actually wasn't the case. It was actually really bad. So I did have to completely level and crown and polish the frets, basically taking it back to square one. So I apologize for that. It must have been some kind of miracle that I was able to set this thing up to play as good as I did for the demo and review. I'm still trying to wrap my head around how that happened. But yeah, the frets were not very good. The good news is that while I was working on those frets, I did come up with an awesome hack to save a bunch of time and get consistent results using a little tool that I made myself. So I put a link in the description to a video that I made on that subject, so check it out if you haven't already. Now, aside from that, I really only had two issues with this kit, and I'll tell you how I fixed those real quick right now. The first issue was that the tremolo was actually really sluggish. Not smooth like a Jazzmaster or Jaguar tremolo should be. I really felt like I just really had to force that tremolo bar, and I didn't get that awesome gentle vibrato that I was looking for. Now the fix for this was actually pretty easy, and it's likely that this issue was unique to my kit and wouldn't necessarily show up on other kits. But what was happening is this plate right here where the strings are connected actually goes all the way through under this tremolo, and the plate was actually rubbing up against the wood at the front of the cavity. Now this was difficult for me to troubleshoot because when there weren't any strings on it or when the strings were detuned, there was no issue at all. So it was only when the string tension was pulling that plate forward just slightly enough to ever so gently rub up against the wood that I was having that issue. So to fix it, all I did was remove just like a millimeter or two of wood at the front end of that cavity, and bam, perfect function. Now, of course, that extra friction that I was getting from there also contributed to the awesome tuning stability that I was getting from this guitar. So when I fixed the tremolo, the tuning stability went right out the window. But that's actually a pretty easy fix as well, so I'll tell you more about that in a little bit. Now, the other issue that I had with this kit is that it didn't have any shielding in it whatsoever, and P90 pickups need shielding badly. For whatever reason, they are way more susceptible than any other pickup to RF interference. So I used some aluminum foil and spray adhesive to make a homebrew DIY shielding job. I won't go into details here because I now have a video dedicated to it. A video in which I completely botched the description of what RF interference actually is. It's actually really entertaining to read through the comments on that video, so check it out. But I promise, the shielding hack actually works really well. This guitar is much quieter now, and well, usable. Okay, now that all those problems are fixed, let's move on to the mods and the upgrades. Mods and the upgrades and the mods and the upgrades and the mods and the upgrades and the mods and upgrades. Now, I really wanted to give this thing some kind of unique look to make it stand out from the now overly flooded Jazzmaster market. So to add to the classic styling a bit, I went ahead and routed in this Rickenbacker style catwing. Now, I decided on this shape over the traditional F-hole because of, one, I thought that this shape just better matched the lines of the body and the pickguard, and two, still being kind of new to routing myself with my limited skill, making a big triangle is a lot easier than making a standard F-hole. Just being honest here. Besides, just saying the term F-hole over and over again just feels like I'm cussing at you. But to route this out, I used a specific router bit called a Keyhole router bit. And that bit is actually designed to remove more material underneath the surface than it does on the top of the surface. It's the same bit that you would use on like a picture frame or a shelf or something that you wanted to hang on the wall. You just slip it over the head of the screw on the wide part and then slide it down into the narrow part. You know what I mean. There's a link in the description for the exact router bit that I used if you're interested in trying out a similar idea. Now with this bit, the cavity that it makes underneath the hole is bigger than the hole itself, but it's not much bigger. So technically this does not qualify as a semi-hollow guitar. Not even close, actually. Now I do know how to convert a solid body guitar into an actual semi-hollow guitar, and I plan to show you how to do that in a future video. But if you recall from my review of this kit, I actually like the tone as is. And as you can see, I ended up keeping the stock pickups for this build. So I didn't want to go jacking with the tone by chambering out the entire body. So this way I get to have the styling that I want and still maintain the brighter tone and sustain that you get from a solid body guitar. Now, some of you might call me a poser for installing a fake sound hole in my guitar, but it's my guitar and I don't give an F hole what you think. For the finish on this guitar, I decided to try out a new idea. What I was going for was sort of a grungy natural burst sort of effect. And what better way to do that than playing with fire? Let's be honest, who doesn't love playing with fire? Now, quick disclaimer, if you're going to use this method, make sure you do so under adult supervision. Now, if you're an adult, make sure you act like one and exercise extreme caution when playing with fire. Bottom line, I'm not responsible for any liability as a result of you trying this method. But basically, with a little propane torch, I just lightly toasted the edges around the body, the headstock, and the pickguard. Speaking of the pickguard, I got this wood pickguard from flatguitar.com. Now the pickguard is laser cut, so the edges are perfectly smooth and the specs are spot on with the original pickguard. So basically this is way better than anything that I can cut out myself using a jigsaw. I highly recommend these laser cut ones. So I actually contacted the owner, Richard Flatt, to see if he might be interested in giving Guns & Guitars viewers a coupon code for his website. But while he doesn't do coupon codes at all for his website, he did say that if you guys messaged him directly through his website and told him you were from my channel, that he would give you 20% off your order through the end of this year. So thanks, Richard, for doing that. I really appreciate it. You're a real bro, man. Next, I stained the body, pickguard, and headstock all with Minwax Golden Oak colored stain. Then I applied my favorite Formby's tung oil finish, coated the entire guitar. Now, when I assembled the guitar back together, I did a few minor upgrades to fix the tuning stability issues. Now, the tremolo itself is actually just fine. Once I removed that little bit of material, I got a nice smooth action just like a Jazzmaster or Jaguar tremolo should be, so no issues there. Also, you guys keep telling me that I need to install locking tuners on my builds, and I keep telling you guys, no, I don't. Now, there's a lot to be said about a good set of machine tuners. You can get really fine tuning adjustability, smoother tuning action, and even increase sustain. But locking tuners for tuning stability are more or less just a gimmick. But if you take a few extra minutes when you're stringing up your guitar to wrap them the way that I do, then you're essentially creating a locking tuner out of any tuner, because the tension of the string locks itself down onto the tuning peg. So locking tuners are really just more of a convenience thing, because they make it easier for you to lock your strings down to your tuning peg, as opposed to having to wrap it a certain way. So if you're looking for convenience, certainly locking tuners will provide that, especially those new Planet Waves locking tuners that also cut the string when you lock them down. That's really cool. But if you're looking for tuning stability on a budget, just keep your cheap tuners and take the time to wrap them this way. Okay, rant over. Now we can get back to actually fixing the tuning stability on this thing. The biggest culprits of tuning stability issues on these cheap kits are the Tune-o-matic style bridge, the cheap plastic nut piece, and the mega cheap string trees. Now I could go into further detail about why these things affect your tuning stability so much, but I'm honestly already talking too much as it is, so I'll save that for a future video. But there are good quality and inexpensive replacements for these parts, like this $9 roller bridge, these $7 roller string trees, and this $12 Graphtec replacement nut, all three of which you can get for way less than even half the cost of a decent set of locking tuners. I put links down in the description for all these parts, and the nut that I linked is an exact drop-in fit for this kit. I didn't have to adapt it at all. The string height was perfect, the radius was perfect, and all the string slots were cut perfect right out of the box. And speaking of strings, I tried out something new that I just learned about. Now, typically I play on Diodario, or Didario if you're phonetically correct, politically correct. I know it's pronounced Didario, I just have a hard time pronouncing it that way because it feels like I'm stuttering. So I'm just gonna call it Diodario. Now, I've always thought that Diodario strings have had the best tone, especially for the money. But what I just learned about are this new light top, heavy bottom set. So basically this set incorporates the heavy gauge strings on the lower notes and the lighter gauge strings on the higher notes. So I get the awesome string tension and beefy tone that I want out of the lower strings, while still being able to get nice, easy pitch bends out of the higher strings. It really is the best of both worlds in my opinion. It took a little while getting used to, but now they're my favorite strings to play on. I just thought you guys might want to know about them if you didn't already. Again, there's a link to a good price on these in the description. Anyway, replacing the bridge, the nut piece, and the string trees did save the tuning on this, so now I can slam away on this tremolo without any tuning stability issues, which you'll see a little bit at the end of my demo. Okay, lastly, while I did keep the same pickups that came with the kit, I didn't wire it the same way. I mean, can you imagine me just ending the video right here saying, well, the guitar sounds exactly the same as it did before I did all these upgrades. Well, see you later.
Boring!
No, like I typically do, I decided to do a few little wiring hacks to get a little more tone out of this thing. Mainly, I just installed a push-pull pot right here, and these push-pull pots are really cheap. I get them on Amazon 3 for $8. But what this push-pull pot activates is whether I'm running both pickups together in parallel or in series. Basically, what that series wiring does is it gives you more output and kind of a mid-range boost that will kick your tube amp into overdrive. So I'll go ahead and demo for you right now the difference in tone between both pickups in parallel and both pickups in series. As always, I'm going to be recording directly into Logic Pro using the British Combo amp simulation, which is basically a Vox AC30. Now, another hack that I did is instead of having a master volume and a master tone, since I'm not really using the master tone knob much anyway, I rewired it so that each pickup has a dedicated volume. So when I'm running both pickups together, I can blend in some different tonal options to my taste. For example, if I want a tighter low end and more mid-range bite, I might roll off the neck pickup just a tad. Or if I want beefier low end and a more mild mid-range, I might roll off the bridge pickup just a tad. I'll show you what I mean.